This week on To the Contrary.
First, the high cost of raising children. Then, in California, women who donate eggs for research can't get paid. Behind the headlines, we introduce you to the new woman in charge of ending sexual assault in the Air Force.
Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, the cost of having children.
A child's smile may be priceless, but the cost of raising one to age 18 will cost parents almost $250,000 on average. A new government report shows an almost 3% increase since last year and 23% since 1960, that even after adjusting for inflation. That's a record high. The increased cost of housing was the main culprit, but food, healthcare, transportation, and clothing are up too, and that doesn't include college. Given those numbers and other factors, it's not surprising more Americans are choosing not to have children. A recent Time magazine cover story, "The Child-Free Life," reignited the discussion. Men and women who purposely forego having children prefer to call themselves child-free and are quoted as saying they live fulfilling lives and don't regret not having kids. A Pew Research report finds 1 in 5 American women ends her childbearing years without having a child.
So, Congresswoman Norton, is it really just the cost, or are there other reasons why a lot of Americans now are not having children, like they just prefer it that way?
Not just the cost, but the cost is a big factor. With 40 years of the decline of the middle class and a government that gives only rhetorical support to parenthood, no wonder people stopped having children.
It is definitely not just a material and economic question. I think there are some important relational changes that have happened in society that don't give parents as much support, and questions about how we define success and the good life.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that we support parents enough in this great nation of ours and a nation of great wealth. I definitely think that has something to do with not having children and people wanting a good quality of life, and women also saying, I want more.
I think you're exactly right. Women do want more, and as someone that chose not to have children, things have changed, things have evolved, and women can do more things than just bear children.
Oh, well, as you and I are the only child-free by choice members of this show right now, let's talk about the reasons why. 1 in 5 is an awful lot, and it's growing, quite frankly. And is it a lifestyle choice? Is it a financial choice? Or in some cases, is it just women who didn't start trying to have kids in time and never had kids because it just didn't work out for them?
Bunny, I think it's all of the above. Mine is a lifestyle choice, personally speaking. I married into a blended family, so I already had stepchildren, and I had other things that I needed to do. And as my mother said, some women are just not meant to be mothers. So I chose a career path, and I have no regret. I have wonderful nieces and nephews, but I also have friends that wanted to wait until they got married, and one girlfriend just said, she was 38, I'm not going to get married, so she decided to have artificial insemination, and she has a son, Zach. So I think it's a lifestyle change, but also financial choices.
Well, you know, Bonnie, when it comes to reproduction, I'm all for choice. And I embrace the notion that we live in a society where a woman can decide that she's going to define herself other than
her children.
Through children. But do understand this.
Yes, ma'am.
Most women want to have children.
That's right.
And yet we end up, I think, they want to have 2-point-something children, and they end up with 1.9 children. So don't fool yourself that all of a sudden we have people out here saying, I want a child-free world. And I don't want a child-free world. I want a world in which people can feel comfortable having children, can feel comfortable and can fulfill the other parts of their lives. I have read the Time magazine article, and those women convince me. You know, when Gloria Steinem talks, she means it. And some of the couples who've been interviewed, they mean it. But you can't tell me the difference between 2.1 wanting and 1.9 getting is simply
and it's bigger than
lifestyle.
that. It's bigger than that. The gap between the fertility aspiration, it's actually 2.5 versus 1.9 that women actually have. So we do
Explain.
have,
Wait
in
a
other
second,
words,
explain.
in other
Yes,
words, the total fertility rate, that what women say they want in terms of the number of children, it averages out to 2.5 per woman. What we're actually having is 1.9 per woman. Now that's a gap that we need to talk about. Jonathan Last in the What to Expect When No One's Expecting is the name of his book. It's been a part of this conversation. He points out this gap between what we want and what's happening, and that's what we haven't had enough discussion about
First of all,
Okay.
so the gap between what women want and what they're having. So why is that a problem? A, and B. I know there's a lot of talk about a shortage. You know, that we're not creating enough new Americans. On the other hand, with immigration, we are growing exponentially. When I was born, we were a nation of 170 million people. We're now 310 million, and we're by mid-century going to be 450 million. So there's no lack of young people in this country.
But I think you asked why it matters. Why does that fertility gap between aspiration and reality matter? Well, it matters on the criteria we've been talking about thus far in the debate. We value what women want, and we want them to be able to make choices.
Exactly.
It matters, too, in terms of our system as a society, paying for Social Security, paying for the welfare state that we have. And that means that there have to be those tax-paying individuals to sustain the level of economic largesse that we have.
But we have that with immigration. You're right.
But you don't have that. Even the Hispanic women now, the latest surveys show, and that's where you're getting them from. Are you really satisfied that the only way in which we ought to be having more Americans is we better have immigrants? Because immigration reform is going to change all that. But the most interesting statistic I have read in the last year is the decline in children by Hispanic women, and that's who's been giving you all these Americans you're talking about. What's
Wait a second, Eleanor. I mean, I'm telling you, in one lifetime, we have almost doubled.
Only because.
And so what does it matter if they're immigrants or non-immigrants?
In countries which.
I mean, there are plenty of children joining this economy.
The way they're going to lock up these borders, if that's your only hope, you're in trouble. That's what our immigration reform bill is all about. But if you look at Italy, if you look at Germany,
1.7,
and you see what happens when people don't have a lot of immigration.
Well, and that's what I want to get to, which is really what's going on here. Is the more educated women have fewer children. Italy, which I always find fascinating. Rome, you know, the Pope, the head of the Vatican Church.
You can do nothing.
And women there are having 1.7 children. Why? Italy has the highest number of PhD females in the world. And so as women get more educated, they don't want a passel of kids to have to take care of.
I think that's absolutely true. And not to throw another monkey wrench in here, but I do want to throw something else in. And that is the declining ability to have children physically because of fertility problems, low sperm count, women fertility problems. That brings in another entirely different subject, I understand. But I think we can't be looking at these statistics without saying what part does that play.
But I want to bring it back to educated women because my grandmother had 9 kids. My mother had 5 kids. But when you look at us, it declined. And do we have more education? Yes. So I do think that naturally women want to have children, but also it's a choice.
It is a choice, but look, the way, that correlation goes,
yes,
when we have the entire population well educated, you won't have any children. That ain't what I want.
Right.
I want to be a PhD. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an MBA, be able to raise my children, and only have what they have in Europe. And what they have is educational childcare, so that I don't go off feeling that like a guilty mom. Right. And I don't know why we can't have that instead of saying the only way to.
Wait. What, the last word, because we got to get out. But you're a conservative, and you're saying yes, yes, yes.
Well, Eleanor and I are agreeing on a lot of these things.
Wow.
But the point is that we need to be, it's interesting as we've had more women's education and career opportunities, it's been according to a system that doesn't work well with women's biological clock.
Nope.
So I think women need to be more demanding in regard to that, about how we get our educational credentials, how we get our start in
and our
workplace,
careers,
to make sure that they're having available all the choices that they want.
Wish we could go on, but out of time on this fascinating topic. Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter @BonnieUrbay or @ToTheContrary. from child-free to egg donations.
Women in California can't sell their eggs for medical research. Democratic Governor Jerry Brown vetoed a bill that would have made that practice legal. Brown said, quote, "Not everything in life is for sale, nor should it be," end quote. But state legislators argue women should be allowed to decide for themselves. Meanwhile, scientists are concerned that without financial incentives, not enough donors will sign up to help them seek cures for diseases such as cancer. Proponents say it's a gender parity issue. Men are allowed to sell their sperm, so why can't women sell eggs? New York is the only state that allows women to be paid for eggs donated for human embryonic stem cell research.
And there are, by the way, Angela McGlowan, other states, such as Oregon, where they're paid for their eggs, where it's neither legal, affirmatively legal, nor illegal to get paid for them. But I don't get it. Men can sell their sperm and get money, and women can donate eggs and not get money? Where's the logic there?
There is no logic there. So it's a man's world, as James Brown said. The bottom line is it takes a sperm and an egg to make a child. We should be equal. So if men can donate their sperm, why can't we donate our eggs? Now, if I decide to donate my eggs, I want to know where they're going and if they're going to create a child in a petri dish, because I don't want little Angelas running around. So if we want to donate our eggs, I think we should have that choice.
Didn't he also say, but it ain't nothing without a woman or a girl? Hence the eggs. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's nuts. If women can't sell their eggs, then men shouldn't be able to sell their sperm.
And this was a Democratic, very progressive governor, Jerry Brown. I mean, you don't get much more left than
No, you don't. It's not understandable to me, and the only thing that I can make it make sense is exactly what you said.
Let me tell you something about
it's
Jerry
sexist.
Brown. Jerry Brown is a many-faceted man. He was in my law school class.
At Yale, really?
He's unique.
And Jerry Brown, of course, and I don't think studying to be a Jesuit priest and then giving it up has to do with this man's for abortion. He's not associated with any of these causes. The part of Jerry Brown that is against the commercialism of the society, that's the part he takes from the Catholic Church, from his, and I think that is the part that's
not everything's for sale.
Yeah, not everything's for sale. You can almost commiserate with that, but I have to tell you, when I read of what it takes, 60 hours, the difference between the sperm and the egg is apparent. Is just dump that apparently to get this egg.
It's a quite serious. The reason they're not the same is the processes are not nearly the same. Sperm donation does not involve
It's much more arduous.
All the more reasons to pay for it.
I understand that, but does it impede upon scientific research? I have discoid lupus. If I could donate my eggs to eradicate lupus, I would do that. Also, they talked about cancer research, so I understand that it takes more time to extract them from us. It's not just putting in a little cup, but we should be able to have that same access.
And it puts those women at risk from whom the eggs are harvested.
But
I'm going to surprise you again
though.
as the conservative here and say I agree with Governor Brown's refusal to sign this bill. And he also said in there...
Well, that's
consistent.
The point is, he said in that refusal that some things in life aren't for sale, but he also said there's no real thing as informed consent in this domain because we know so little about it. We know so little about how it affects the women who are their ovaries are overstimulated, hyperstimulated. It's
but
a
not
surgical
in every
procedure.
Case. It is a surgical procedure.
By
I'm a conservative here as well, but I believe that if men can do it, women should be able to do it too. And if it could eradicate certain diseases,
but you
we should be able to have that choice.
You even mentioned you would donate for medical research.
Right.
But you would not want it to be used to create a child.
No.
Under the law, do you have control like that when you make donations?
Well, this is for stem cell research, and that is controversial in and of itself. It may have to do with a lot of the opposition to this.
Right, but I mean, can you donate and be paid for in some states maybe an egg and say this is strictly for a petri dish?
I have not heard
and
that
this cannot be developed into
most
a
of the
human
states
being.
have no regulation whatsoever, so it can be used in any way the researcher uses it.
So that's why I preface it as the fact that I don't believe that we should create a child, because I do believe when the sperm meets the egg, it is a child. However, if I could donate my egg and it can help, I think we should have that.
But let me ask you this. Wait a second. You can still create, when you create stem cells, you have to
then Bonnie,
match
then,
an egg and a sperm,
then,
it's not going to become a child, but it is still used in a petri dish.
Putting the egg and the sperm together, from my spirituality, is a child. So therefore, I pull back supporting it if that's what the research is for. But from what I've read, the information I was given is donating the eggs for research that could eradicate cancer. As for stem cell research, I was not aware of that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I get this clear.
Sure.
It's not okay to give an egg to make a child because of your religious beliefs?
No, if my sister wanted to have another
child. Okay, but outside you, should it still be okay for a woman to do that?
I think a person should have a choice if they want to donate their egg to create a life.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to create a life, to experiment on that life, to eradicate disease is a no.
All right, we're out of time on this one. Behind the headline, sexual assault in the military. The Air Force has a new weapon in its arsenal to combat assault. It's Major General Margaret Woodward.
General Woodward has only been in the job for 2 months and is the first woman to lead the Air Force Office on Sexual Assault Prevention and Response. It's a tough job, made even tougher by 3 factors. First, she replaced Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Krasinski, who had just been charged with sexual battery, a charge later replaced by generic assault. Second, influential New York Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is pushing a bill that would take prosecution of military sexual assault cases out of the chain of command, something Woodward opposes.
I count on the chain of command to set the right climate to hold accountable the members in their unit, and I need to have those two together. I'm afraid if we take it out of their lane, give it to someone else, not only will it not help, in fact, as they've seen overseas, that it actually hampers their prosecution and lengthens their prosecution rates.
Senator Gillibrand told us this summer, taking prosecution out of the chain of command has worked in other countries.
The responsibility we're giving to these trained military prosecutors is just to make one legal decision. Is there enough evidence to go to trial? And that takes legal training. It takes prosecutorial discretion. And so I believe that objective review will be fair both to the victim and the defendant.
But General Woodward disagrees.
They actually did that to help the accused. The rights of the accused is why they changed their system. And if you look at their statistics and how their system has progressed since they changed their system, in no case have they gotten better results, and it's actually taken longer to get prosecutions through. So I think what is key to this is attacking any of the little loopholes that are out there that have caused a problem in the system.
The third factor is the Air Force issued a new policy last month under which airmen who commit any type of sexual misconduct, whether groping a coworker or rape, face dismissal from the service. 2 months into her job, General Woodward says she's encouraged by an increase in the number of reported cases of sexual assault in the military.
As depressed as I am to see the airmen and the issues, I'm happy to see the reporting because that's a faith in the system. That's airmen who feel comfortable with coming forward and reporting, which is a huge challenge.
There were an estimated 26,000 cases of unwanted sexual contact last year. Approximately 3,400 were reported. 800 of them were in the Air Force. The common but mistaken belief is that the majority of victims are women, but in fact, 53% were men, attacked mostly by other men.
This is not a gender issue. It is a problem that affects both males and females. I think there's a lot that we need to understand about especially male victims, to be honest with you, and perpetrators have a lot of similarities because it's really much more about power and control than it is about sex.
Woodward says nobody wants to solve this problem more than the military, but that requires building a culture that supports victims and makes them feel safe to step forward.
I don't think it's any commander or airman that's trying to make that victim feel that way, but it's just a lack of understanding how you embrace them, or not understanding what that trauma is doing to the victim and what it takes to go through and recover from that trauma. A sexual assault victim is 6 times more likely to experience PTSD than someone who hasn't been assaulted.
According to the RAND Corporation, an international research organization, military sexual assaults cost the U.S. $3.6 billion in medical and mental health services annually. Expense aside, Woodward's biggest concern is rebuilding trust, service member to service member and commander to officer.
When I go into combat, I have to trust that wingman to the left and right of me, and if I can't do that, then it's going to impact my capabilities and my readiness.
So, Judge Carnahan, what's the best way to deal with this problem? I mean, it's been going on for decades now, decades of publicity, starting with tailhook in the Navy in the early 90s, and they've made very little, if any, progress. What's going to work?
I think what the senator wants to do is going to work. Take it outside the system. What's so striking about this, Bonnie, is that when you look at the assaults, report after report, it's up the chain of command. It's a superior that many times is doing the assault because it's a power play. And I do also want to point out, very disturbing in one of the articles that I was reading, that there was a prosecutor from New York who was hired by the military to consult the military and teach them about sexual assault and how to deal with it. And one of his statements was, when you look at the assault on the men, it was more like hazing, more like a ritual, not a sexual movement, not a sexually motivated thing. None of these attacks are sexually motivated. They're all about power. They're all about dominance. They're not about sex.
Well, this distinction is going to be very important. When Congress returns, I'm going to insist that the military break down what they mean by sexual assault, because I was shocked. I thought it simply meant men doing to men what they do to women, and apparently it does not, and all of this is lumped together. But I was really impressed by why the Europeans have changed and why Israel has changed. They simply invoked the concept we live by, due process, that due process requires an independent person to make the judgment. And here is what we thought we taught the world, and we have our European allies, of course, who taught us, reminding us that is the difference between justice under law and what other people or other countries
But
do.
what separates us from military and civilian is the fact of that there's a different arm of the law. And I'm with the lady that was interviewed in the piece that you have to trust your wingman when you're at war. I'm not a person that could carry someone in a foxhole wherever I do something else. And so I believe that they should have their own judicial system, even though the people at the top where the problem doesn't mean that the system is wrong. Right. That means that they're putting the wrong people in power.
Due process means that we have to have the expertise in the prosecutorial system to be able to wage a prosecution that it will bring these problems to light. We don't have that right now in the JAG system. So there needs to be reform of that so they can develop the expertise, the defendant, the prosecutorial expertise that currently doesn't happen.
But do you think that's possible?
I do think it's possible.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We have to have commanders. The commanders that send people into harm's way have to be the commanders that establish discipline as well. That's not the problem. The problem is within the prosecution and how expert that system is.
So reform the system, not throw the system out.
Oh no, indeed, the system is not what people are trying to change. They're trying to change one factor in the system, the independence of the prosecutor. Leave the rest of the system, which is quite different from ours, in place.
Okay.
This is the one linchpin for due process, and I agree. This is the steps that are being taken now are simply on the way to that independent prosecutorial change. It is going to happen.
You know, the military is a family, and so you need somebody outside the family to be independent, looking in at the family.
You need a nanny. That's it for this edition of To the Contrary. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Bay and at To the Contrary, and visit our website, pbs.org/To the Contrary, where the discussion continues. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, please join us next time. Right.
right? In the military.
No,
You don't think so?
No, if all you're going to do, if the gag is a separate court, you can't do anything. That's yeah. So it really doesn't change
The system, so just do something with the JAG officer.
That's that officer.
No, he supports up the chain